in this report, in particular, we look at what we've called excessive use, which is what some other people might call internet addiction, children who spend a lot of time online, but most importantly, children who have kind of negative outcomes, negative consequences of their internet use, like they don't sleep, or they don't eat, or they have fights with their parents or with other people because of what they do online. And it's not helping them in constructive life, in living a happy life. So what we've looked at here is across Europe, what the patterns are and what the explanations might be for why some young people end up having this kind of excessive internet use and other people don't, other young people don't. One of the things that we found that was really interesting in this report is that time online in itself is not linked to that many negative outcomes. So children who just spend a lot of time on the internet don't necessarily experience more negative outcomes than children who spend less time online. What we did find is that for some young people, particularly those who are older, but more importantly, those who have sensation-seeking habits or those who have emotional problems, spending more time online actually leads to negative outcomes in their real lives. And interestingly enough, those children who have emotional problems or who are sensation seekers, who can be considered vulnerable in their real lives, when they gain skills and when they gain the ability to use the technology more, they experience more negative outcomes. Now, obviously, our advice to parents would not be to keep the children away completely from the internet or from learning how to interact with technologies. We would say that parents, but also teachers and educators, adults who are close to these children, should watch out for those children who might be vulnerable offline in an offline situation and realize that the way in which they use the technology might not be constructive. So it's really about identifying, spotting early on which children might have problems that would lead their use online to lead to these negative consequences that we obviously don't want children to have. Also important in this sense is that parents and teachers, the adults involved in children's lives, are actively engaged with what the children are doing online, because one of the problems with excessive use is that it's probably cumulative, and that if you look at it at an early stage, spot at an early stage when a child might be having problems, that then this pattern can be interrupted and the real life problems can be dealt with so that excessive internet use doesn't occur and the children don't experience negative outcomes. One important last comment would be that these levels of negative outcomes, the number of children that actually really experience what we might call internet addiction or a really problematic internet use is very, very small across Europe. Our classification shows that it's about 1% of children that really would fall into this category. So in general, children are actually quite good at staying away from experiencing these negative outcomes. But every child at one point in his life or her life experiences some of them. That's also natural, and parents should not worry about that. But as I said before, we need to keep an eye out for those children who are particularly vulnerable to this internet use actually leading to negative outcomes.